Hi, welcome to the Andrew Buckle book review of Strange Tales, the complete collection, Human Torch and The Thing. Probably some of the weirdest stories Marvel produced in the 60s. Very odd collection in that respect. Includes Strange Tales 101 to 134. Now before this, they were all monster stories. After it, of course, the story was S.H.I.E.L.D. It was sharing it with Doctor Strange as well. A weird mix, but it was a weird mix anyway. Human Torch and Doctor Strange. But you had some great stories with Sandman, a wizard, Paste Pot Pete, even Iceman turned up. Loads of people turned up. Here's some originals. Got here the Strange Tale one. You can see, of course, it's the same size as that one, Strange Tales 101. Very tatty copy. Cost me absolutely next to nothing. And I've loved it ever since. So that one can go there. And this one, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Can't remember where I bought that one. Still, onto this book. 500 pages. Let's go through it. There should be an omnibus collection. I do not know why. They've never released an omnibus collection. Likewise, the Ant-Man as well. But you can see different artists involved. You can see quite a long list. So the variety, Steve Ditko. And also there was quite a weird number of combinations of artists with the inkers as well. It wasn't just straight all the way through. So the style of artwork really does change quite a bit. You can see there's stories there. October 1962 was the first issue, all the way through to 1965. Even had the Beatles turn up in this story as well, in these stories. First one was the Destroyer. Not the greatest villain. And you can see it gives a little bit of detail about who knows who he is, that he's a part of the Fantastic Four. Also, quick recap, origin, some bits of scene that, of course, we didn't actually see in the original story. Onto the actual story. He's also got lots of powers. He often shows, and there's Sue Storm as well. Another, oh no, it's not Sue Storm, looked like Sue Storm. She does turn up in this though. Another crank note, it says there. And does she turn up? She probably does turn up. I'm certain she does. She turns up in the next story anyway. Prisoner of the Wizard, Human Torch, Part 1. I love the way they did that. Part 1 and then Part 2, Part 3, etc. And they often have a job code, and I cannot see the job code there, weirdly, unless they've removed it somehow. 102 there. Who needs it? You can see there. Obviously, at this point, they were still doing the monster stories, and poor old Human Torch was reduced down to here, a feature-length one. It was actually quite long, so you've got Part 2 there, Wizard Wiles. And of course, at this point, he makes it look like the Human Torch is a villain, a super villain. The fact that he saved the world numerous times does seem a bit, everyone sort of immediately thinks, oh, he must be a villain. He could be hypnotised, he could be whatever. But no, everyone assumes the worst of the poor old Human Torch. But of course, he gets out and the wizard is stopped. But by an appearance of a certain character from the Fantastic Four, which is very useful. Which is one of the things that slightly bugged me. And I think even at the time it bugged me. Why they didn't go with alternating the characters. Instead of just going always with the Human Torch. Maybe they were looking for the sort of young market. I guess that was the idea. But it just seemed would have been nice if they'd done the story with Reed Richards 1 month, then Invisible Girl. You know, they could have gone backwards and forwards. There's no reason it needed to stay as a Human Torch. Maybe they would. People obviously probably, you buy it 1 week and then 1 month and you think, oh, I don't want the Reed Richards one, maybe. That was probably the reason as well. But I think it was a pity they didn't do that. But this one, Prisoner of the Fifth Dimension, really good little story. Now that character, as well as some of the other characters, turned up a bit later in the Fantastic Four, quite a few years later. But it was one of these alternate or another dimension stories. And also, again, all these sort of Part 3, End of Zemu, as it says there. On to the next one, which is, of course, another character from the Fightful Four. Like the Wizard, of course. We've got Paste Pot Pete. I loved it when he was Paste Pot Pete. Trapster, yeah, it was okay. But Paste Pot Pete, I mean, what an impractical, and also, look at that. I love that. He carries his glue around like that. Really useful. And his bag as well. That is quite a bit of effort to lift all that, wouldn't it? All that money. And all that glue. Glue probably weighs a ton. Unless he, of course, develops something very ultra lightweight, but super adhesive. But he can use it to do all kinds of things. Obviously, quickly fly. Now, he never used that ever again. I don't think that technique. Never saw him do that. Never think, you know what, I'm just blast my, paste all the way up into the air. Wouldn't have fallen back very quickly. I somehow suspect it would have been a very powerful gun there, wouldn't it, to do that? But still, on to the next story. We got the Wizard back, the return of the Wizard. And you can see it's Jack Kirby, of course, Stanley, Larry Lieber, Dick Ayers, etc. And the return of the Wizard. Now we got the full on there Human Torch on the cover, which is great. Why did the Fantastic Four let the Torch tackle that fortress single-handed? Who knows? But it still makes for a really good story. The Wizard, of course, is a great villain. I must admit, I loved his power gloves that was about issue 81 or whatever it was, Fantastic Four. Luckily for the Human Torch, he didn't use the power gloves then, or Wonder Gloves, or whatever it was called. The threat of the torrid twosome. And you've got this character here, and of course he hasn't got a chance. Can't. No, something is wounded. He hasn't got a chance. The Fantastic Four guest appearance boost the sales, I'm quite certain. The occasional appearance of those. Again, I don't know why they didn't have Strange Tales, the Torch actually on there, and the Thing. At that point, obviously later, they realised that, yeah, it's actually useful having the Thing. The Thing is a very popular character. And of course, this one has got liquid asbestos. Not only has he got asbestos sheets, he's got asbestos clothes. He's got liquid asbestos. This is very dangerous. Actually, one of the most dangerous comics ever. I think it's just not a good idea. This guy probably regretted that. However, Unique's got good old Submariner. You can't beat, of course, a story between the Human Torch and the Submariner. And it's got, of course, got a cover for that as well. A classic cover, which is used on the front there. So you can see the mighty Submariner facing each other in this breathtaking saga. And of course, they did that back in the 40s, those classic stories, Submariner versus the Human Torch. And you got there the Master of Flame versus the Monarch of the Sea. Really good little tale. And again, this is one of the ones where he's got all sorts of skills and things that never uses ever again. I mean, I don't remember that. He's stuck fast, but all I have to do is exhale, etc. And there he is, all resolved. Did he do that? Ever. I can't recall doing that. But anyway, still got lots of other things he can do. He can obviously zap people, but he's done that a few times. However, onto this. This one was a good one. The Painter of 1,000 Perils. And of course, this guy, he can paint things and obviously create scenes, and he uses it, of course, for super evil purposes as ever. Wouldn't have been just useful just to create some wonderful things for the world. No, it wouldn't make much of a story, would it? But that is still a good little tale. Of course, the Thing vanishes fairly soon afterwards. You got that weird gorilla-like character. I'd also, my imagination would create a weird gorilla looking like that. I don't know how practical that would. That wouldn't really be a good villain to face. Make everyone run away, I'm quite certain. However, you got that. Obviously, a bit like the Miracle Man, I guess. That sort of thing. Obviously, he zapped, hypnotised everyone. In a way, this is sort of similar sort of things where he can alter reality. Always a Molecular Man. Molecular Man. Who is he? Another character. Pandora's Box in this case. Actually, quite a similar sort of story, I suppose. Things coming out, obviously, and you got here, go my faithful imps, etc. Destroy the Human Torch. Yet another one of these sort of power-mad people. You're helpless against the evils of... And everyone's standing around, and there he's stealing away all those paintings, as they do. And also he goes into a fur warehouse, which seems to have got lots of characters from the Iceman. What's he doing there? That's very odd. Oh, freezing them while I clean out their vaults. Oh, another asbestos character. Asbestos Man. Another not great idea my flames don't affect him. Oh, come on, you've got that supernova power. You've got Nova Flame. Why don't you use that if you're facing someone? Marvel Group ushers in the Marvel Comics age. And there he is battling away with that. Now, I'm not certain about, was that asbestos as well? Or was just somehow was very good at reflecting? But, of course, he beats him. We know he does. You win. Onto the Living Bomb. And as mentioned, he does face a lot of very oddball characters. None of these characters I don't think really turned up that often, though this one does actually, because it's the Eel. Why did they put Living Bomb? Battles the Living Bomb. That is the Eel. That's strange. But still, odd title there. Now, the Eel, I think that must have been the first appearance of the Eel. Of course, the Eel turned up in many other stories after that, but there he is. There, the Eel again. Oh, it's got atomic bomb just blowing off, a H-bomb or whatever. Now, this has to be one of the weirdest of annuals. Really is. Strange. I mean, I love that STRA, in different colours. That's very odd. Issue 2 and Amazing Spider-Man, because you've got Spidey there. It always looks slightly chunky Spider-Man. But the weird thing about this is it's drawn by Jack Kirby and inked by Steve Ditko. Now, I've seen many other examples, I'm quite certain, of that combination. For some weird reason, this looked just plain odd. really, if you turned around to me and said, is this, if you just show saying, look at the characters, they don't particularly look like Ditko. They don't particularly look like, for me, Kirby particularly. It's just odd. Very odd. Just the whole artwork. There's a few scenes that maybe you could say, look, but the drawing just very, very strange. The story's not particularly good either, unfortunately. It's one of those weird ones that the character is completely hopeless. The Fox, I think his name is. Coming of the Plant Man. The Human Torch, the coming of the Plant Man. Of course, this guy, you can see, obviously, he's got a bit of an angry streak there. And there he obviously has been told off. And he's got my invention isn't crazy. And, of course, he sneaks in there. And again, one of these characters you think, well, just surely you would have used your invention for the benefit of mankind, probably would have made a vast amount of money if he'd probably marketed it correctly, but instead he becomes a villain, loses it all, and then we get Captain America in the next one. Of course, this was a great story because it was brilliant, meets it, don't reveal the course of the thing, which I won't reveal, returns to challenge the Human Torch. So it was interesting that they sort of did a tryout, which I suppose is one of the plot things to say. See the Torch soar to new heights of greatness. And of course, after that, Avengers issue 4. But still, really good. Very enjoyable. And Sue Storm is there again. Johnny, hold everything. We got big news. Watch it, guys. And of course, splash to get... it's a bit of a mess there. And Sue disappears off into the distance at that point. But we've got then the Sandman strikes. And you've got the 4 coming there. Obviously, I love the Sandman. Sandman was a great character. The unpredictable Sandman, as it says there. By special arrangements with the amazing Spider-Man. What? They had to ask Spider-Man magazine to see the Sandman. The Sandman can choose who he wants to battle. Surely if he wants to battle Thor, well, he doesn't need permission. He's impossible to stop, isn't he? However, the uncanny Sandman, as you can say, Torch will have to save himself without my help. And, of course, on to the next story where we got the artwork really changes quite dramatically there. I don't know, I think, who the artist was there, but this one is one of those weird stories. And this one's a Fantastic Four 14 of Certain Doom, of course. That is very odd bit of art, that one. However, lots of people, based on an idea by, and it puts a little, based on an idea. That's really nice, isn't it? But with special guest art, the Thing, in the clutches of. But it doesn't, here it is, Dick Ayers and George Bell there. Inked by George Bell. But it is one of those strange ones. There are a few of these sort of ones where you occasionally look at and think, very odd. And then you've got the eel again. He returns. The return of the eel. You think they could have introduced some other characters. Maybe they could have had a character that would have been like the Iceman. That would have been a good one. But maybe an Iceman villain. The Snowman or something like that. They could have introduced some characters that were, at least with Spidey, he did face sort of characters that were like Dr. Octopus, obviously against the Spider-Man, etc., etc. The Human Torch should have had a whole run of characters that were sort of themed around heat, energy, sort of thing, controlling of the elements or something, like Crystal character back in the, that would have been a great one for this, but instead they just kept introducing these sort of weird characters, a bit like Ant-Man in many ways. Just odd. Again, you've got obviously Sue Storm there. Bring her into the story. Now, the Thing hasn't regularly appeared in this yet, which is very odd, but you can see there the eel, and obviously you've got a shark involvement there. Nice connection, obviously, there. But the Wizard, he's back again. Let's have a look. The Wizard. And he's gloating as ever. The return of the Wizard. They loved that, didn't they? The return of, he's been back 3 or 4 times now. The Man Who Became the Torch. Featuring the Man Who Became the Torch. Featuring the return of the Wizard. Okay. So you got there, obviously, what's there left doing? He's showing off his ability to make all spirals and those things. But of course, the Wizard planning to escape. And then he flies off with an absolutely huge one of his gravity. You think they would have spotted that, wouldn't you? What are they doing? He's tinkering away. And I studied the art of disguise as well from the Chameleon. Maybe the Chameleon was there. Maybe he could have used him. Actually, I'm surprised the Chameleon didn't turn up in this. That would have been a good one. They could have had him sort of looking like Reed Richards and all those sort of things. But we got Sue Storm. Reed actually doesn't appear many off times, but there he is. There you can see, and obviously the Thing there as well. On to the next story. You got the Rabble Rouser, and that was a good one. Sort of like the hate monger kind of character. You got this guy, obviously, who makes the torch goes wild, as it says. And you got obviously reading the paper there. You got a lovely bit of flame there, And the rabble-rouser is using his mesmerizer tool. And of course, that's going to end really well, isn't it? But then we get the Iceman story. The Human Torch meets the Iceman. I love that one. It wasn't one of those standard ones where you have a long battle, particularly between the two. They seem to get on reasonably well, and it works out, of course, nice. And also includes this: the Torch meets the Iceman. You've got the, of course, Fantastic Four theme on the time. I love that. The present. That's really useful to communicate that. And also, of course, we see the X-Men there. I don't know how many issues the X-Men have been going for that time. Again, this is a guest appearance courtesy of the X-Men magazine. I guess they have to put that. Of course, people go, oh, I wonder what that is. And they have to rush out and find the X-Men magazine. But I don't know what the actual stories were at that point. And you can see there, frozen solid, of course. The Human Torch, where he can quickly bring them up to a reasonable temperature, can't he, by using his powers. And there is, of course, the Human Torch, sort of having a bit of, don't worry, Iceman. So it's not that usual sort of conflict that they always generally have between superheroes when they meet. And we get back with the Plant Man again, the prisoner of the Plant Man. Yes, he's back, and he's obviously got his wonderful gun again that he's using. Will he win again? Of course not. But still, he goes around blasting everything, turning everything into various dangerous-looking plants. And of course, he's got these thorns and things, which is probably quite dangerous. But against the Human Torch, really? That's just not going to work, is it? But still. Also, you got the Fantastic Four turn up at the end as well. 3 against the Torch. Absolutely brilliant, of course. This was a Doctor Doom early story. I really enjoyed that one. I don't know why they didn't include them a few more times. In many ways, it was a bit like the Frightful Four, sort of prototype Fantastic Frightful Four. And you can see there the character, they capture him. He's got super strength, well, reasonable, about 3 times stronger apparently, or something like that. Again, he was given powers by Doctor Doom. And also got the guy here, obviously. He's got some, what powers were I can't remember. He's a yogi there, trained in mystic occult arts apparently. And of course, oh no, he was asbestos as well. He couldn't handle the flame. That was the reason. I think that was it. Vaguely remember that storyline. However, we next get the Beetle, which again, the birth of the Beetle. This is again a slightly unusual one because it's the sort of character you would have thought that they would have introduced in Spider-Man. But the Beetle story, that was a good one. Also, that was a good one as well. The Loki story, Doctor Strange and Loki, and Thor, of course, turning up as well. Is he far behind? Of course not. And you got here, the Thing turns up. The Beetle's turned up lots of times. Of course, he's faced the Avengers, loads of other characters, Daredevil, and many others. He's actually got quite a reasonably convincing, powerful costume, hasn't he, really? He's got bulletproof steel wings that I'd never could work out how on earth he could be flying around. I'm not certain his powers, how he could do that, but still. Pastebot Pete again. Quite a regular sort of turn up of Wizard, Pastebot Pete. And with this one, of course, he's got a slightly different costume again. And you can see there he's obviously designed his costume to make it even more powerful and all that sort of stuff. Adjustable intensity nozzle and redesigned his bulletproof vests. All very useful. So also he's got special gloves and things and stuff where he can cling onto walls and things. That's pretty cool. And of course he captures the Thing. I'm not certain that would have happened. Surely the Thing could break through that, especially instantaneously. He did that quite often. He could get through it, but in this case, he doesn't. But then we got the Human Torch versus Submarine again. Obviously, yet another story. Were they running out of ideas at this point? There was a lot of repeating some of these characters, and I just wondered, really, perhaps they could have maybe thought up a few more. But still, again, another one that sort of was earlier on. The Puppet Master, and of course, at this point, he'd sort of teamed up with the Mad Thinker. There was quite a few of those stories. They never seemed to get on very well, but still, the pawns of the deadly duo. They weren't that deadly. And personally, I always felt that Mad Thinker teaming up with anyone, sort of always made no sense because he was one of these guys that had his supercomputer and he could sort of work out all the unpredictable things and predictable things and everything else. And yet, for some weird reason, he teams up with the Puppet Master, probably one of the most unpredictable characters, who was always really not doing very well at all. This one, Dick Ayers, admired penciler. Paul Ryman is our desired inker, and Stanley, our inspired writer. There's nothing about what Stanley's saying. And then, on the bottom bit, I just love these one. S. Rosen is our tired letterer. They were great, weren't they? They brilliant stuff. And there he is, gloating away as usual, of course. Oh, they tricked me. And we're on to the next story, the mystery villain. And the mystery villain is... Can you guess? Probably not. Yes, you can. Of course you can. That story actually, I think, turned up later as well. This one is the one I've got. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. I don't know if they were even thinking part of the Avengers at this point. Is our chance to flee from Magneto and his band of evil. At the time, I'm not certain if it was a couple of months afterwards they were with the Avengers. I assume they were. So this story, of course, they don't know anything about them, particularly the Thing and the Human Torch. Well, they're battling against the Scarlet Witch, of course, super unpredictable powers. And of course, you even got the Iceman turns up in the story, just as a little cameo there. And on to Quicksilver, then battling away against the Thing and the Human Torch. I always loved Quicksilver and the Human Torch. They were great, especially in those early days. Those really early stories were just going, terrible trio again. It definitely, when you go through this, you realise the number of times that they seem to be repeating the same villains over and over again. Story by Stan Lee, pens by Ayers, etc. And Frankie Ray this time. Frankie Ray, I'm not familiar with Frankie Ray. Anti-Semitic, as if things aren't bad enough. I don't think they were treating this magazine particularly really seriously. Perhaps Nothingville, as it says there. But of course, you've got some very odd artwork at times. And you got here Yo-Yo again, and also, of course, the strong man. I can't remember his name. And against the Thing, really against the Thing. He's just. But also, you get the Beatles as well. I mean, how cool is that? That was the next story. The Thing, I love the fact that they didn't include the Beatles or anything on the front. It was sort of tucked away. Just tucked away. Meet the Beatles. However, on to the next story, which is really good as well. As it's the Mad Thinker. He's obviously ditched the Puppet Master at this point, and the Mad Thinker, of course, has gone downhill. I always remember the first issue the Mad Thinker turned up, and he was really powerhouse. He controlled the Baxter building and all that sort of stuff. Now he's reduced to a sort of, obviously doing, of course, a bit of a maniac with the ultimate weapon, and he's thumping away. I don't know. I give up. And the bouncing ball there. Yeah, there were some weird stories in this. Very, very, some really odd artwork as well. No, that was very strange. However, this one, we're getting near the end. We've got here the Sinister Space Trap. Luckily, it isn't again the Trapster or anything, I don't think. But we got just a bit more. Johnny is obviously doing some various work, bending various things there. The stories went a bit slightly odd by the end, I have to say. Even my sort of willingness to say that they were great stories, that one, possibly not. And also the terrible toys as well. Very strange. Very, very odd ending for this series. Sort of, yeah, I don't even know particularly about that character. Very weird. Look at the Thing there. It just burst. And then, but even weirder was the final story. The final story, Enter the Watcher. Of course, Doctor Strange is in this issue too as well. In many ways, I don't know why they just didn't have Doctor Strange on the cover. But this one, the challenge of the Watcher. I bring a challenge from another galaxy. Oh, really? You're not supposed to involve yourself in anyone. You're not supposed to. And then you're popping up just saying, we've got a challenge here. A desperate thing to bring in a story where they go and have a back to the past, and you've got the Kang there. Because, I mean, even Kang was sort of substandard Kang with a lot of sort of fancy sort of thing, showing off his powers to Merlin. I can challenge Merlin, etc. There he is, a master of time travel. Really? On to a bit of a time for a medieval joust. And again, really, really odd. So odd story. But we got the next, especially since Ramatut. Of course, that was the story, of course, being with Kang. Obviously, he'd already faced the Human Torch anyway. Actually, weirdly, Kang didn't really have many stories with the Fantastic Four, did he? Just can't think of it. Maybe he did later on. I don't know. I know it was mainly Avengers, but Human Torch and Fantastic Four wasn't particularly a constantly. But this, it was a bit a non-ending. This, I guess at this point, it was really glad that we ended up with the S.H.I.E.L.D. stories, which were great. I love those early S.H.I.E.L.D. stories. And you can see there, the last panel, you've got obviously all resting up at the end. And that was that. Obviously, they never had another story. I don't know if there was plans for another story, but it really did feel, and he's even using his power there. Obviously, he's radioactive. You dare not come close to me, etc., etc. Use that one a few times. Prisoner of the Fifth Dimension. You've got a few ink pages here, which is always great, always good to have. I love that one. That one's number 6. On to the Painter of the Thousand Perils. And then we've got the annuals. And of course, you've got the other annuals there, the Fantastic Four, number 1. And also Avengers issue 1, the greatest superheroes in comics. Obviously came out around this time. This was 1963, of course. And then we got these. These came out in the 70s. I think these when they came out. This one I certainly remember getting, and some of the others I think I bought as well later. So you got here the Wizard story, etc. And this one is the Torrid Twosome again. And the series, I think it was only about 8 issues of that, and then it was gone. And you can see there the cover of that. And what's on the back? Thing and I haven't noticed that before. Oh, Thing and the Human Torch by Dan Slott. So that is the complete collection of these stories. Have you ever read them? Will you ever read them? Well, after hearing all the stuff about all the different issues, you're thinking, no, I must check this one out. They are very odd 60s stories. I have to say that I love 60s stories from Marvel, but these, it's probably a 50-50. Some really good ones that I really enjoy, and some that are just so plain odd. Do you think, why? What were they thinking when they did these? Very odd. But still, it's nice that they've been collected. Still would be nicer if they bring them out in an omnibus collection. I suspect that will never happen, but who knows? A like or dislike, always appreciated. Also, please subscribe to the channel. Thoughts, anything like that, always great to hear from you. Bye.